No booze, no sugar, no carbs. Well, how about no dopamine? Apparently, that's a fast that's changing behavior. And doctors, including one at Stanford, are proponents prescribing it.
All right, so we got to talk about this. How does it work, or is this just some TikTok thing? Our medical expert, Dr. Pyle Coley's with us now. First, when you say no dopamine, like our body produces dopamine, how do we tell it to not make dopamine?
So dopamine is our reward chemical. It gets triggered when we have pleasure, we have reward, we have motivation. So think about going out to a nice dinner, having a glass of wine, spending time with your kids. All of those trigger dopamine. Everyone has a baseline level of dopamine. This is what sort of defines how happy we are at baseline. Some people are happier, some are less happy. The problem is when we keep firing those reward centers, they start to burn out. So you need more and more of that stimulus to trigger that same dopamine. So we sort of get used to it, so to speak.
But we want to be happy. We want to feel
Right.
these things.
Sounds like a bad plan to me, but
what am I supposed to do?
So this dopamine fast is a way to sort of reset us back to a sensitive level of dopamine. Because now, if you think about how addiction develops, you drink a glass of wine, you feel good. You drink one glass, it doesn't give you the same feel good. So this time maybe you'll drink 2. The next time maybe you'll drink 3. So you start to need more and more because the brain down regulates those receptors. So the idea of fasting from our reward behaviors, taking a break, this is kind of like dry January too.
So that's like no dessert, or no second glass of wine, or no whatever.
No watching sports,
makes
no
you
enjoying
reward.
yourself. So, but do we know our baseline? Is there a real baseline? Or are we kind of guessing at what our baseline
Yeah.
is? Like, because I mean, obviously there
good
is a medical number, but when do we know we're at baseline?
So that's a great question. Everybody's baseline is different, and it also evolves over the course of your life. So you can imagine the way we feel in our mood is multifactorial and really, really complex. It's not just our behavior, it's our circumstances, it's our health, it's all of these other things. And as we get older, you can see differences in levels of dopamine neurons as well. So certain neurological diseases can change how dopamine works in our brain. So this fast is supposed to sort of rest our dopamine system. It takes about 4 weeks before you start feeling good, because at first you'll feel terrible because you have less dopamine. But 2 to 4 weeks you start to feel better, and the theory here is you've sort of reset that system back to the way our ancestors had it, where it was working for good and not for bad.
So in a vacuum, that sounds great, but in real life, you're around your spouse, your children, your friends, your coworkers, and if you're on the zero dopamine thing, everyone's like, what's wrong with him?
Go away.
What happened to him?
Well, not only that, Tom, you're making a really good point, which is that you cannot isolate dopamine firing behaviors. And that's the criticism of this dopamine fast. So a lot of people are saying it doesn't work because lots of things trigger our dopamine. On top of that, our happiness is not just dopamine. Our addiction is not just dopamine. It's other neurochemicals as well. And this is overly simplistic to say you can just fast from reward behaviors and change the way your brain thinks about
Sounds
reward.
like somebody put the dope in dopamine.
I know.
That's a bad plan.
I'm going to quote one of our directors, Lawrence Gibbs, who would say, "That's a terrible idea, this fast." But
So you can't go to a movie. You can't go to a game.
Yeah, I mean, is there like, this is a really silly question. Do people take any kind of vitamin or anything to increase their dopamine or something that they could maybe cut back on, something simple?
No, so no vitamin will sort of increase your dopamine,
Okay.
but certain behaviors can, like exercise, for example, drinking a lot of water.
Well, then we don't want to do,
Getting sleep, those types of behaviors. But you guys are making a good point, which is that part of our happiness is this reward, right? And so there's certain people who really shouldn't be doing this. And to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of the dopamine fast. I'm not a believer because the science is not there yet. People are prescribing it empirically to see if it works. But think about it. If you're somebody who has a history of mental health problems or substance abuse or depression, this could precipitate suicidal thoughts. It could precipitate. Yes. So I'm not.
I don't know how you insulate yourself from it too, because it's not everything is forecast. I mean, there are things that happen to you that make you happy that you don't see coming, and they're the most beautiful things in the world. So, like, what are you going to do? Hang up on someone? I'm sorry, I have really good news. Sorry. Not taking that call
Can't
today.
take it.
I'll talk to you in February.
But it will increase your awareness. And that's where I'm going to say you don't want to hang up on the person, but you start to figure what makes you happy, what triggers that happiness center in your brain. And to me, maybe even participating in the dopamine fast, even if it's not scientific and it's all psychologic, could make you a little happier because you start to appreciate what makes you happy.
Geez, won the lottery. This ruins the whole month.
The lottery.
That dopamine
That'd be a
everywhere
perfect
now.
example. Now what am I doing with the dopamine?
Dopamine cleanup on aisle 3. Big mess. Thank you for bringing that to us, though. Interesting discussion and something to think about, as
Yeah.
always.
As always.
Not for me, but it's fine.
And you know what? Lots of people want to hear everything Dr. Coley says, so you can find out more with Dr. Coley's information, all of her advice at 9news.com/Dr. Coley.